Greetings. This is Paul Lear, and welcome to valortube.com. Again, my name is Paul Lear. I am an original content provider at valortube.com. Take this opportunity to welcome everybody to This Week in Prophecy. So, actually, we probably ought to rename this show This Week in Ezekiel 38 and 39, because the bulk of the information we're going to cover this week is related to that prophecy. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy, the Cliff Notes go ancient Magog, Gog of Magog, which would be modern day Russia, will be joined by Turkey, Iran, Libya, and arguably the Sudan, Ethiopia. Most likely Sudan, but the way things are going, you could see a couple of countries and others, and they will look to join forces and invade Israel. And they'll come in through the Golan Heights, and their purpose is primarily economic, to steal, plunder, take booty, spoil, and definitely of the opinion that the hook, which God talks about, the prophet Ezekiel talks about, is probably going to be natural gas. Israel has a pile of it in the Eastern Mediterranean in their waters, and pieces are falling into place. Had lots of discussions this week with Checkmate, who's also another original content provider at valortube.com, and he I think we both saw this same article within about 5 to 10 minutes of each other. He sent it and we exchanged communication back and forth over some of this. This is a big deal. Russia's biggest move yet to take control of the European gas market. And this is from oilprice.com. And I would also recommend you guys follow along with Checkmate at ValorTube. He provides plenty of news articles regarding these topics. And he also offers up his opinion analysis of the situation. Write some brief commentary on it. It's very, very informative. So, but here's the move. Russia has managed to secure the largest share in Iran's huge Chalous gas discovery, a move that could have huge economic geopolitical consequences. A senior Russian official believes this was the final act in securing control over the European energy market. And if you watch what's going on, that's what Putin's trying to do. He wants to corner the market on natural gas, and he controls the spigot to Western Europe. And he's already cut production by anywhere from 2/3 to 3/4 to Europe. That's why it's one of the reasons prices are going sky high in the European markets, and the cost of natural gas. So it's going to be very expensive for those folks to heat their homes if they can get hold of natural gas. So the Chalous gas discovery, we'll go back to the map here. Like, here's the Caspian Sea over here in the eastern part of this map, or to the right of it. And it's down here in the southern Caspian Sea. Now, some people, I was reading some other stuff, argue this may actually be in Azerbaijan's waters. Not sure. We'll let them figure that out. But you can bet your bottom dollar, or bet your bottom ruble, that Vladimir is going to have control of what goes on and how natural gas flows through this area. No doubt about it. He's the orchestrator. And Iran, for their part, has signed deals with China for like 25 years. And then they also signed, I think, something with Russia for 20 years on this deal as well. So, scroll down here to the bottom. Iran and Russia, bottom line, Iran and Russia have arguably the largest gas reserves in the world. They're under control of those. So, if Russia and Iran have reached a deal to where Russia is going to develop it. Well, Russia controls the majority of those gas reserves, and I believe it's approximately 40%. The Khazar Exploration and Production Company, KEPCO, that's Iran, and then Gazprom. Gazprom's in the middle of everything. I think I've done several stories on Gazprom. Gazprom will have overall responsibility for managing the Chalous development. Transneft will do the transportation and related operations. CNPC, that's China, is doing a lot of financing. That's a great banking system over there in China. Nothing crooked going on there. They're going to do the financing and providing the banking facilities. And CNOOC, CNOOC, will be doing the infrastructure parts and engineering. So you're looking at China, Iran, Russia, all getting together to play nice to effectively control the natural gas flow into Western Europe. And this is something, previously I've always had, I'd always been of the opinion that I thought Russia would wait till Israel had their infrastructure in place and started delivering natural gas to Europe. Then they would step in and want to take over. I mean, because after all, why not have Israel build all the infrastructure, put the labor and cost in, then just go take it over once it's in place. But after watching this move, I'm not so sure about that anymore, and I've been rethinking that position because there's plenty of money to be made in and around the infrastructure build. Gazprom's going to get to control it, and maybe that's something. In Checkmate and I, we bounced this back and forth, and it does make sense, because especially this move here in the Caspian Sea, there's no infrastructure in place yet, just proven reserves. You got to go get it and process it and transport it. But you can see there are other parties that will be making money off of that as well. So it's not that big of a reach. Maybe Israel doesn't have to have all their infrastructure in place before or Russia would decide to invade and go get it. So, but this article from oilprice.com, they had some inside information on this. There's the 20-year deal I was telling you about. 20-year Iran-Russia deal, and then Iran has a 25-year deal with the Chinese as well. But you can see how much money these folks are going to make. Given the likely length of gas recovery at Chalous and the fact Russia intends to take less than 10% of it over the course of the 20-year deal, sources close to the deal estimate the total value of the gas site at $5.4 trillion. That is a pile of cash. And you can also think that if you control the flow of that gas and keep the demand high, those numbers could go larger. But oilprice.com, this is the principal article that everybody's quoting. And this is written by Simon Watkins at oilprice.com. And again, please go check out Checkmate's information. He's been all over these sorts of things in and around the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy. He also, he looks at a variety of foreign affairs and diplomacy issues, and it's good stuff. Highly recommend it. But, again, we've been kicking this thing around. This is a big week because, effectively with control of this, Putin has the ability to manipulate gas prices on a global level. That's a possible outcome of this. And that is not a stretch. I know that's a crazy big statement, but that is not a stretch at all. So, and again, going back here to the map, we're talking about down here in the southern Caspian Sea. Is where this proven gas reserves are coming from. So, which leads us to space. So Russia did this over the weekend. Russian anti-satellite, or not over the weekend, over the past week, Russian anti-satellite missile launch into space, dangerous and irresponsible. So Russia decided to blow up one of their satellites in space. And Russia gave the United States no warning of the launch. This is according to the Pentagon. And the quote is, I'll just read you, and this is from defense1.com. U.S. government has condemned a Russian anti-satellite missile launch that blew up a Russian satellite on Monday, generating debris that now endangers the International Space Station. And so here's a quote from our U.S. State Department spokesman, Ned Price. Today, miles above us, there are American astronauts and Russian cosmonauts on the International Space Station. What the Russians did today with those 1,500 pieces of trackable orbital debris poses a risk not only to those astronauts, not only to those cosmonauts, but to satellites of all nations. So Russia wanted to show, hey, we can launch a missile and we can blow up a satellite that's orbiting the Earth. And they did it. And the 1,500 larger pieces also generated hundreds of thousands of pieces of debris too small to be tracked. So we watch closely the kinds of capabilities that Russia seems to want to develop, which could pose a threat not just to our national security interests, but the security of other space-faring nations. And again, that's from John Kirby at the Pentagon. And the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken put out an official tweet. We condemn Russia's reckless test of a direct ascent anti-satellite missile against its own satellite, creating space debris that risks astronauts' lives, the integrity of the International Space Station, and the interest of all nations. So, just recapping, Russia bought some natural gas, got their hands on a bunch of natural gas, fired a missile into space, blew up one of their satellites. And oh, by the way, this is from U.S. News and World Report. I mean, they effectively, the headline tells the story. Putin discusses Nagorno-Karabakh with Armenia's Pashinyan, Kremlin says. And this has to do with Azerbaijan and Armenia. So that they started fighting again. And I think we're roughly talking about this area in here. They started fighting again. And Putin's going to be is kind of the peace broker. He was behind the ceasefire that happened. I believe this happened a little over a year ago. They started scraping again. I think I read somewhere hundreds were injured, 6 or 8 died in the latest skirmishes between these two countries. And this is the part that the head scratcher. Armenia is by and large a Christian nation. Azerbaijan is a Muslim nation. Russia sides with a Christian nation. And we kind of loosely here in the United States are siding with Azerbaijan. And Iran's upset with Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan has a relationship with Israel. Everybody confused now, but that's kind of the overview of what's going on in this region. And then, oh yeah, by the way, we found a whole bunch of natural gas out here in the Caspian Sea. And some argue that could actually be in Azerbaijan international waters. So you can see Putin wants, he's the power broker. Russia's the power broker in this area. And it all has to do with natural gas. We're not going to touch on this, but I saw this evening. Thousands of troops are being called up in Russia and being moved to the eastern Ukraine border. And they already control the Black Sea. They stepped in. Russia stepped in, reclaimed the Crimean Peninsula. So Vladimir's very busy in this part of the world. And he's a player And this little conflict here between these two countries, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, Turkey, of course, is pro-Azerbaijan. They see it. They've got an Armenia sandwich. And there was some issues back in the early 1900s with Armenian genocide, which Turkey denounces, or Turkey says it didn't happen. Armenia is still upset with Turkey over that. So there's a recent history within the last 100 years, with all the players that are going to be a part of the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy when they go to move on Israel. And so we'll just move. I mean, so here we go. We're going to follow along. We started out in Tehran, Iran, southern Caspian Sea, natural gas deal with the Russians. Russians are intervening between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And then Turkey, we're going to move a little further west. And this is the backdrop going on in Turkey. Their currency continues to just spiral out of control. And so you go back and, gosh, 9 months ago, like $1 was equal to roughly 7 Turkish lira. Well, it continues to crash. Now $1 is equivalent to essentially 11 and change Turkish lira. So just from a purchasing standpoint, I mean, costs just on the currency alone are up 40%. So I mean, just imagine going to the store, and you got a $2 loaf of bread. Well, that same $2 loaf of bread now is on the currency alone pushing 3. It's going up higher than that. So energy costs are going up, electrical costs are going up, medical costs increasing, groceries, clothes, everything's being impacted by this with the people in Turkey. And I haven't had any real success trying to be able to affect the lira continuing to be devalued, which is causing more inflation in Turkey. Every time this happens, President Erdogan's response out of Turkey is he usually goes and starts a war or starts some sort of military intervention as a distraction, or to take some things from an economic standpoint. And which leads us to this out of Israel. Turkey says it won't be deterred from gas drilling contested in East Mediterranean. Real short article again. This is out of the Times of Israel. Turkey's Deputy President Fuat Oktay says, "We're not afraid of anyone. Those who seek an adventure in the Eastern Mediterranean will get an answer." So now, conveniently, Turkey doesn't recognize Cyprus as a country. And so you got all these different countries out there. ExxonMobil, U.S. company, partner with Qatar Petroleum. They're going to start resuming drilling in an area southwest of Cyprus. And they have licenses to go after that. So, we'll go over here to Cyprus. So you got United States and Qatar countries drilling here. Israel has their big natural gas fields here. Turkey says, we're not afraid. We're going to go drilling here because they're starving for cash. Their currency's being devalued. Total of France, Italian Eni is also drilling off the southern coast at the beginning next year. And again, Turkey does not recognize Cyprus as a nation and contests waters where the Cypriot government claims exclusive economic rights. So Turkey thinks it's theirs. These are our waters. Well, we want it. Okay. So Eastern Med is a hot mess right now and will continue to become a hot mess. And again, just the greater context of all these discussions, natural gas and who gets, Western Europe. Russia is looking to control the flow of natural gas to Western Europe. And every place you go, somebody related to the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy wants a finger in the natural gas proceeds. And there's really only one thing keeping Russia from totally controlling that now, and that's Israel. Israel hasn't made a big move. They're selling things right now to Jordan and to Egypt, and Egypt in turn is selling some of that stuff to Western Europe. But Israel does have plans, and they will go through Cyprus. That's part of it, and they also want to build a massive underwater pipeline. Israel does end up in this town called Thessalonica, First and Second Thessalonians, and that's going to become a relevant player in all of this. I find it fascinating. All these places, all these cities mentioned in the Bible 2,000 years ago in the New Testament, they are becoming more and more relevant in our news today. It just is what it is. And from Thessalonica, they want to move that natural gas to Italy. Will be another place where it will be distributed from. So here we go. We'll be watching that, continue to watch what takes place there. And then the last place we're going to go, this happened yesterday. This is from the BBC out of the UK. I don't understand this at all. Sudan's military reinstates ousted civilian Prime Minister Hamdok. I'm not sure. Excuse my pronunciation. But about a month ago, there was a coup in Sudan. And the reason we're interested in Sudan is they are the country that's arguably involved with Russia and Iran, Libya, Turkey, and others when they go to invade Israel. Again, part of the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy. So Sudan's ousted Prime Minister, Abdalla Hamdok, has been reinstated following last month's coup when he was put under house arrest. And so the spin on this is that we don't want to see any more civilians killed because they're on the streets. Khartoum, the security forces have fired tear gas at protesters marching toward the presidential palace and demanding the military's complete withdrawal from politics. Well, there's more than just tear gas. There were some people killed. Yeah, 40 people have died in mass protests. And the previous prime minister, who is about to be reinstated as the prime minister, Hamdok, said he had agreed to the deal to stop the violence. Sudanese blood is precious. Let us stop the bloodshed and direct the youth's energy into building and development. That's what he told Reuters. And under the agreement, the reinstated prime minister will lead a cabinet of technocrats until elections are held. I don't know how the whole thing is shady. And Sudan has a history of all kinds of coups. I mean, so this is nothing new, what's taken place in Sudan. Hamdok told Al Jazeera the deal gave him complete freedom to form his government and hold elections before July 2023. I mean, there's been a lot happening in this country in just the last 3 to 6 months. I mean, that's assuming they can hold it together for a year and a half to get to elections. I'm a little dubious of that, but we'll see. I think this probably had a factor in it too. World Bank froze aid to Sudan because of the military actions. What was the other? He says the army acted to prevent a civil war that was threatening to erupt because political groups had been inciting civilians against security forces. There was one other comment, and I thought this was probably much more accurate in some of the thinking behind this. The fear is that continued instability in Sudan will further threaten the volatile Horn of Africa. And there's no doubt about that. So, needless to say, we've had a lot happen related to the Ezekiel 38-39 prophecy. I can say this, at least in the Sudan, there was no mentioning natural gas. That's kind of the outlier there. And we're going to close. We're going to go to the Canary Islands. And this is La Palma. And that volcano is still erupting. We're going on day 65, so a little over 2 months. And I'll back this out and we'll slide over to La Palma. And this is La Palma, furthest northwest island. Well, look at this. We've taken off Google has stopped recognizing that there's a volcano there. Isn't that interesting? And it's erupting. But here it is. This is what's actually taking place. And just kind of hold this picture. This is a live video stream from La Palma. And obviously it continues to erupt and lava continues to spill. But then look at these. This is a post I'd done, several years ago, just talking about the Millennial Kingdom and the geological upheaval, the change in geography that's coming to planet Earth. Revelation says, and every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. I mean, so the Bible is calling for a time there will be no more islands. So at some point, the Canary Islands, and granted the context of this is one island northwest of Africa. So it's not like we're seeing this happening all over the place. But when you hear these verses and you see these images, Psalm 97, verse 5, the mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. I mean, I think you have a mountain there that's kind of melting like wax. I mean, it's idiomatic language, but it draws a nice mental image compared to the real thing. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. Now, granted, the context of these verses are the entire earth. So at some point, the whole earth is going to be subjected to what we're seeing in the Canary Islands. The Lord lays the earth waste, devastates it, distorts its surface, and scatters its inhabitants. That's out of Isaiah 24. Some people call Isaiah 24 the mini apocalypse. I don't think it's a mini apocalypse. I think it's a big one. Isaiah 24, verse 19, the earth is utterly broken. The earth is split apart. The earth is violently shaken. And we see that same idea is noted in Revelation at the end of every series of judgments. So it's like seals, trumpets, and bowls at the end of every one of those series of judgments. They're documented by an earthquake. And at the end of each set of 7, the earthquakes increase in intensity, and punctuated by the one in the bowl judgment. It says the largest earthquake in the history of the planet. And I think it's the first one in the seal judgments, that the earthquake is so severe that it literally shakes the continents off their foundation, and you get the idea continental drift as how it's described in the original Greek language. But and granted, yes, I'm taking that literally. I really think this is going to happen on a global scale. I mean, we're looking at several verses that indicate that. Micah 1 verse 4, and the mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will split open like wax before the fire, like waters poured down a steep place. Again, these verses, the context is global. We're looking at one island in the Canary Islands. And the reason I bring this up, earthquake activity has increased this week. And this is from Eurojournal, English, eurojournal.press. La Palma volcano live updates today. Eruption, tsunami warning. That's a problem. And latest news from the Canary Islands. So previously, this had been rated alert degree 2. Well, now it's been upgraded to 3. Earthquakes are happening deeper, and the strongest one happened, I believe, was Friday morning. So a couple of days ago, increased to 5.1. We had somebody, a volunteer was killed, was the first person killed because of the eruptions. 2,600 buildings have been broken by the lava circulation, and 7,000 of the island's 8,500 residents have been evacuated. So, and also earlier this week, started having some landslides, and that's why I bring this up today. With the deeper earthquakes, more intense earthquakes, and increased lava flow, starting to have some issues with landslides on the island. And so the concern is, the BBC and History Channel did this several years ago, created this video that roughly a quarter, 20% to a quarter of the island, and you can see where this is formed right along this rift, that this part will slide off, will break off and slide off, because there's a big crack that runs along the crest of these mountains, and that it'll fall apart and slide into the ocean. And the concern is this will create a tsunami that will eventually reach the east coast of the United States and the east, primarily the northeast coast of South America. Depending on what you read, United States has a position paper. I think the Navy has a position paper on this. They estimate up to 30 feet, 30-foot tidal wave. And then the doomsday scenario is as high as 150 that would go 10 to 12 miles inland. Now, hopefully we never have this happen, but Scripture says there will be no more islands. Now, what causes that? It would appear that there's some significant changes coming with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and seismic activity will probably play a role in it. We continue to have the polar caps ice melting. That could also have a factor in some of this. I mean, there are all kinds of things at God's disposal here, how all these things will take place. So, but it is worth paying attention to. Of course, our press, they're not saying anything. They'll give some lip service to it at the end of a newscast and talk about the violence of nature and play the closing music, and off they go. But know what Scripture says about it. A level of destruction is coming. I don't think we can comprehend it, but it is global and comprehensive in nature. And what we're talking about right here is on one island, off the northwest coast of Africa. And this little tiny island, if it breaks apart and slides into the ocean, could create some significant damage. So it can't be underestimated. And if you have a series of these things taking place across the planet at the same time, coasts across the world will be in real big trouble. So, at any rate, appreciate you guys following along. Again, probably should have renamed it this week in Ezekiel 38 and 39. I didn't touch on this week, but more war games out in the Pacific with the United States and Japan in the South China Sea. China didn't like it. But that's all there was on that front. But the bulk of the information was what Russia was doing this week, and then anybody related to Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it's becoming pretty clear the end game is control of gas flow to Western Europe. So appreciate you guys taking the time to listen this week. Also encourage everybody to look at ValorTube and take a listen to what Checkmate's putting out there. Great source of information. Appreciate your time. Catch you next week. Have a good one. Bye.